Hi, welcome along to another episode of Man in the Mirror. It's Hayden Williams here, and Man in the Mirror is a podcast where each week I talk to a male guest about their life and work, self-care, self-image, about grooming, fragrance, and what they think of the man who looks back at them in the mirror. Now, this week, I'm really thrilled to let you know I'm joined by Ashley Ogawa Clarke, who is a fashion and lifestyle journalist based out in Tokyo. Now, I've been looking at Ashley's work and seeing his writing for a few years now. There isn't many people, to be honest, in the kind of lifestyle and grooming and skincare worlds who write about it. And Ashley's absolutely one of the top people in his field. So I've admired his work for a long time. And one of the great things about the podcast is just reaching out and saying, look, would you like to come and have a chat? And we had a sort of introductory chat a few weeks back, and it was brilliant. And so Ashley's in Japan, and I spent some time there, as I've bored on about many times on the podcast. So we had that in common, and it turned out we'd also done the same sort of teaching program in our 20s in Japan. So we had that in common. We also have a love of grooming and skincare. So we had a great chat before we did the podcast, and then set up our time to do the actual recording. Ashley's worked at titles such as GQ, the Wall Street Journal, Vogue, and Mr. Porter. And I think you're going to find it a really interesting conversation. He's got a real curiosity about quote unquote masculinity, what it means, what it looks like, what it means to him, and almost a kind of, an intellectual approach to it. So we had a really wide-ranging and fascinating conversation about how he sees his masculinity, how he expresses it. So I hope you're going to enjoy this. My huge thanks to Ashley. It was a real pleasure and a privilege to spend some time with him a couple of weeks ago. So here we go. It's Ashley Ogawa Clarke, who is a freelance fashion and lifestyle and skincare journalist on the Man in the Mirror podcast. I'm Hayden Williams. Let's go. Welcome along to another episode of Man in the Mirror. It's Hayden Williams here. This is your fix of grooming, of skincare, self-care, all those good things. And each week I talk to a different guest about their life and work, and they tell me a bit more about some of the key items on their bathroom shelf. Now, there's a journalist that I've followed for a few years and really love his writing. And I think if there was ever a sort of Venn diagram of things that really kind of get me going, if you've got, sort of grooming, skincare, you've got writing, creativity, and then you add in Japan, which is bored on about it before on the podcast, but spent some time there. So if there was this Venn diagram, then Ashley Ogawa Clarke would be slap bang in the middle, because he sort of ticks all of those. And he's a fantastic journalist, and he's on the line from Tokyo. So hi, Ashley, how are you?
Hi, Hayden. I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Long-winded, ridiculous way of introducing you, but
no, I love it. It's the red carpet.
Yeah. So, like I say, I've really enjoyed your writing, and one of those rare people, because there isn't really. I mean, there's obviously lots of lifestyle and fashion journalists, but I guess you caught my attention because you also write about skincare and grooming and some of the things that we cover here on Man in the Mirror. But as I mentioned in the intro, you're now in Tokyo.
I am.
So I guess with writing, you can kind of still deliver for anybody anywhere. So what took you to Japan and Tokyo specifically?
Well, it's actually my second time living here. So I first lived here in 2015 to 2017 when I did the JET program, which I know that you also did.
Yeah. So Ashley and I had a little sort of pre-chat a couple of weeks ago, and I think I knew this anyway, but it turns out that we both did this JET program where you sort of teach as a foreign teacher, work in the Japanese public education system, and I did it many years before Ashley. But yeah, a real sort of formative time and something that we had in common. And then you obviously went back again.
Yeah, I went back kind of properly. So I
went back for more.
Because I guess, I don't know, being here as an English teacher in Japan is there's a lot of English teachers in Japan. It's the easiest way to get into the country.
Yeah.
But I think this, and, you know, I think the time when I was here, I was like 20, I think I was like 24. And it was a lot of fun, but it felt like kind of a long holiday because I don't know what it was like at your school, but
no real responsibility or anything, was there, really?
A lot of desk warming, as they call it. But it was a lot of fun. And
you're sort of exotic person in the corner, aren't you? Sort of teacher's room, like, who's that foreigner? What's he doing?
Yeah.
But you obviously loved it enough to go back. I mean, we're skipping over a whole bunch of stuff, but
yeah, we can get to all of it. But yeah, to cut it short, I came back in September last year. So I got married. My wife is Japanese, which made like visas and immigration obviously a lot easier. And then now, I work from here. And as you said, luckily I've got the job where I can work absolutely anywhere. And, 90% of my work is outside of Japan. It's mostly US, UK, Hong Kong. And, the Japanese work environment is famously, difficult to navigate. I think even for Japanese people, it's punishing, from what I hear.
A lot of sort of different stratas and layers, isn't there, I think?
Yeah. So I get to avoid all that complicated stuff and just live out the nice side of Japan so far.
And you were telling me when we spoke before, I think you were out at your wife's family house for a little while that was much more rural, but now you're sort of back in the city and back in Tokyo again. So that must feel different again, sort of going from something that's a lot more tranquil back to kind of urban living.
So when we were in London, we lived in Dalston, just off Kingsland Road, really busy, busy, buzzy and grimy and, all the kind of great things that London is.
Yeah.
And we were very lucky that when we moved to Japan in September, we had a place to stay. It was in the middle of nowhere, completely out of the way, in Kanagawa, which is, for people that don't know, is a prefecture just west of Tokyo.
Right.
But it was, it was, like you said, tranquil. It was brilliant to be there. But, like my wife, Raina, she's a stylist, so she couldn't really work from there. So, and I also, even though I said a lot of my work it's obviously for foreign publications, but I do still interview people in Tokyo, and that's where everything's going on. So it made sense for us to move. And so we've been in our apartment in Tokyo for like 2 weeks now.
Settling in.
Yeah.
So let's kind of rewind a bit, if you don't mind. So I'm just interested in the beginnings, really. And obviously you write about fashion and, say, skincare, grooming, lifestyle, travel, things like that. But when you started off, do you think it was an interest more in the sort of process of writing and journalism itself, or did your love of it sort of come via the route of fashion and style? Was it sort of one or the other, or a bit of a kind of mix?
I think it came from that classic thing of being good at English at school,
right?
Which is quite like a traditional like answer that I guess you get from a lot of journalists. It's like, that's what I was good at school, and I always thought I wanted to be a writer, whatever that meant.
Yeah.
And then, I thought I'd write like novels and that kind of thing, and then quickly realised that that's not necessarily a job that you can
start with that. Can you?
I've not sold my bestseller yet. So.
It'll happen,
Never say never, but I thought I wanted to write for a living, and I kind of knew that that's what I wanted to do. I didn't know it was going to be fashion, and it's something that I didn't necessarily fall into it. I was very interested in fashion, but it was I remember, I think it was like a friend of a friend had like a fashion magazine that I don't even remember the name of while I was at uni. I didn't get paid for it at all. It was just like writing. I think one of my first articles was writing about Marc Jacobs wearing a dress to the Met Gala.
Really?
So I've always been interested in like masculinity and clothes. And I think like clothes as identity, I was very fascinated with, and was probably very, I don't know. I think I probably really intellectualized it when I went to Goldsmiths in London, which is kind of,
sort of famous kind of art-based uni, isn't it?
Famous for being super arty-farty. But I studied English there. I studied literature there. So it was
Didn't
an
Blur
interesting
go?
place
Didn't Damon
to do
Albarn
that.
go to Goldsmiths?
Yes, he did. And Brian Molko, I think, went there for a bit. So yeah, it's got a, I don't know. I loved it though. I moved to London, to Newcastle when I was 18.
And where did you grow up, Ashley? Where was home?
So I grew up in Grimsby, which is...
So where's that if people don't know the geography of...
People don't know. It's, well, people always ask you like, oh, is that like near Manchester or is that near... It's not near anything at all. It's it's kind of near Hull.
Coastal, isn't it?
It's coastal. It's on the East Coast.
East Coast.
Just south of Hull on the other side of the Humber estuary.
And a sort of fishing town, right?
It is historically a fishing town, and now it's a very white working class, quite deprived area of the UK. But it was also a very sheltered place to grow up. I'd say it was not, there's not a lot happening there.
So your interest in the arts and English and fashion, was that nurtured at school? Did you feel like you were encouraged to do that, or was that something that you discovered more when you came to London?
I think it was. I mean, I think again, it was in my English classes. I think that I felt, encouraged. And one of my teachers, I'd never heard of Goldsmiths, and I think my parents asked because I was pretty good I did pretty well at school, and I think my mum asked one of my teachers, who was, I think, I didn't really know this at the time, but looking back, she was like a kind of ardent socialist, like super left-wing teacher that used to tell us that the Daily Mail was a hate rag, which now I'd completely agree. But she was the one that said, "Oh, he should go to Goldsmiths. He'll fit in there."
Yeah.
And, a lot of people I went to school with are still there now. It's not necessarily the easiest place to escape once you grow up there. So I think when I was 18, I knew that I wanted to leave and just do other things.
And then post-uni, how easy or difficult was it then to plough this sort of furrow into, fashion magazines and writing? Did you do that sort of classic thing of interning somewhere, or what was your route into? Because some of the titles, I mean, obviously I mentioned it in the introduction, but you've written for Vogue and GQ and Wall Street Journal, Mr. Porter, places like that. They're quite rarefied places to work. What was the route in?
I mean, it was really difficult.
Hustle.
I think. Yeah, like looking back, I think it's I don't know, it's that miserable thing of that you need luck if you haven't got the connections or the kind of safety net. You need a lot of luck.
And were you sort of connected with people, or was it literally?
No, I wasn't. I did it very much as an outsider, and I don't.
Yeah.
So I actually started interning at a biannual magazine that I don't know if you'll have heard of, called Pony Step.
No.
It was named after the walk that models do on the catwalk.
Oh,
It was
right.
I mean, it was brilliant. We had like Amanda Lepore on the cover. We had like Amir Khan, Jerry Hall. It was very cool. It was super like camp and fashiony, and
one of those really sort of thick biannual things. Massive,
thick glossy things that you'd get in Selfridges for, I think, like £14 or something. Yeah, and it was amazing. But I remember my first week there. I was like, I got a job as a fashion intern. Well, a job, like a volunteer position, let's say.
Right.
And I got a travel card. And I remember walking to the train station with the art director on my first week after work on my first week there. And I remember him going to his second job at the Breakfast Club, which is like a cafe restaurant in London.
Oh, I know. Yeah, in Soho.
And I remember thinking like, oh, like, do you go? And he was the art director. So I remember thinking like, oh, you just have like a second job. Is that just like for extra income? And he was like, babe, that's for my only income. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, I don't get paid. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, well, nobody does. That's when like the penny dropped and my like dreams shattered of working as a fashion writer. Cause I realized like, no one's getting paid. What are you talking about?
It's just the same now, though, isn't it? I think.
I think so.
Probably worse. I know friends who are stylists and things, and expected on these quite prestigious editorial things. Those kind of magazines just do it for their portfolio and do it for nothing.
Exactly.
And I guess it's the same with the staff, isn't it?
I know a lot of like That's like,
Oh, that's good. It's authentic Japanese background noise.
that's my robotic bath.
Your robotic what?
The bath runs itself, and
Oh,
my
right.
wife, it must be like topping itself up. I don't know.
I love it. It's so high tech. It's like a Clive James documentary or something.
Yeah, it's all very high tech here.
Well, yeah, we were talking about people doing those kind of magazines for nothing, just to sort of
and
to help your CV, I suppose.
And I think, and I don't know how I survived, but I managed to do that job. I mean, first of all, I spent it kind of running suitcases to PR offices across London, and like precious jewelry and like fine jewelry, running like pearl necklaces back to Mikimoto in central London, and
wow,
try not to leave them on the tube, and I just like awful.
Sell them for cash.
Yeah, like really like tough, hard work, late nights, and not getting paid for it. I don't know what I thought I was doing.
And were you doing other work as well to sort of make ends meet?
Yeah, so I would take time off. So I worked there full time, and I worked at American Apparel at the weekends.
Right.
In the shop in Covent Garden. I was always late. It was terrible. So in the end, I started working at Morley College in Lambeth. And I used to like recruit students there. It's like a night school for like people doing like pottery and like languages.
How do you recruit?
Like enroll people.
Oh, I see. I just had visions of you outside with leaflets
flyers,
going.
No,
I'd do pottery.
I'd put like, it would be like middle class women coming in to do pottery. So I'd put their details into the system. That was like and it was really well paid. It was like a public.
Sounds very genteel and lovely.
It was quite nice. I was really lucky to get it. It was a nice thing to do, to then pay through my interning. But I don't think I could do that nowadays, because rent was a lot cheaper back then.
And was there a sort of, was it kind of a gradual step up through, some of those prestigious titles I was talking about, or or do you feel like there was there one moment where fortune shone down or something happened, or was it all very gradual?
There was a couple of moments that I felt like, oh my God, like I might just be, because for a while it felt like a pipe dream, especially after realizing that nobody got paid. I thought, but I worked at Penny Step as doing all the suitcase stuff for a few months, and then they promoted me to managing editor, which is an incredibly
sounds very
high sounding title for like a 21, 22-year-old that didn't know what they were doing. But I and didn't get paid for it. But I learned a lot, and then after almost a year there, I managed to get a job as a fashion assistant at the Daily Telegraph.
Okay, that's proper, isn't it?
And it is proper, and it was one of those HR gauntlets where they make you introduce yourself to everyone else in the room, and then you have to like do a workshop together, and then you have like an interview.
Makes
with
me cringe thinking
editors.
about it.
Yeah, and then I had I don't know, like a day of like induction of, like a day's worth of an interview with all these other people, and then I had an interview with a couple of editors, and then the fashion director. If I got through to the like final stage.
Yeah, you're jumping through hoops of fire, basically. So.
Yeah, and I managed to get that job, and I remember them calling me and feeling like I'd been rescued from. Well, it was the internship. Like I said, it was great, but this was like
you can't do that forever, can you? You can't.
No, and this was in this job at the Telegraph was terribly paid. I think it was like £250 a week, and you had to fill out this sheet every week. It's like, terrible. For me, it was like a total saving grace of, now I thought when I got that job, okay, it's proper. I can make this into a career.
Yeah. Yeah. And then was it did you go freelance quite quickly, or did you sort of work in-house at a bunch of places?
So that was when I did the JET program. So I remember I was working there, and I remember thinking I'd always wanted to go and live in Japan.
Oh, so you'd got the Telegraph job?
Yeah, because I had this thing where
interesting.
I thought, I don't know, since I was a kid, let's go back a bit, and I can like tell you about why I got interested in Japan and why I left the Telegraph.
Yeah.
Growing up in Grimsby, like I said, super white working class, it was kind of devoid of any international culture at all. But when I was about 11, I started doing karate. That my dad introduced me to do it because he did it when he was younger. And it was like, my parents like bless them, tried to make me do all these extracurricular things. I hated football and I hated like, I don't know what, they just tried to make me do all these activities and I hated it. Acting and I don't know. Karate was something I loved it. And it was, I think it was like the kind of like, it's the physical sport of it, but then like the mental, like meditative side of it. It was just something so different to me. And it was so, for want of a better word, exotic, because it was nothing like I'd ever seen or experienced. And that kind of kickstarted something. And then, you know, to make it, to kind of condense it, then you think about things that I grew up with, like Pokemon or like Tekken on the PlayStation and all these things that, and then, you know, as I got older, I was into like Comme des Garçons and Yohji Yamamoto, the fashion designers. And I remember thinking it kind of clicked, like all these things that I like come from Japan. I want to go there. So that was...
So it was a long held sort of ambition.
Yeah, I'd always thought about doing it. And I remember one of my lecturers at uni was like, I remember her life advice was like, go on the dole and go and teach English abroad. She said that's what you should do as a graduate, which I think is really good advice.
It's pretty good. No, it's interesting that because I kind of rolled from university and then did 2 years in Japan, which was sort of great in a way because it didn't sort of interrupt any career things, but I really admire that thing of, you know, it sounded like you'd had to hustle pretty hard to get where you got to, and, you know, gone through all that to get at the Telegraph, and then saying, okay, I'm going to hit pause and sort of explore this interest I've got in Japan. You know,
it was a scary thing, but it was one of my editors at the time. She's a couple of years older than me, and just like a really excellent fashion editor. She was kind of like a mentor kind of figure, but I remember her saying to me like, go and do it now, because if you don't, you're locked in. She was, I'm locked. And she said to me, I'm locked in now. I would love to go and live abroad, but I can't. Yeah, I took that advice.
I suppose it was early enough, wasn't it? In a way, it's not like you'd kind of, you know, gone up through different rungs and all.
Exactly. And you know, it's very shaky at that point, but of course it was scary to leave and think, you know, to leave England and to think. But it worked out for the best, because even when I was teaching English in Japan, I very quickly got bored with just doing that and was like, oh my God, I miss kind of fashion and writing. So I very quickly started writing for ID magazine and Dazed and a few other things. And I didn't know how to like be a freelancer, but I started like cold pitching editors and used the kind of very limited network I'd made at my year at the Telegraph, and made a lot of progress in Japan that first 2 years round. And I was surprised at how...
I suppose you could use it to your advantage, couldn't you? In a way that, you know, you were based somewhere different that would, you know, still in journalism, you know, you can get people to do things in different territories, but you were there all the time, and I guess you were spotting trends and things going on. It was probably great that you were based there and could offer a perspective that some of those editors wouldn't be able to get readily elsewhere.
Exactly. And I think I was so like kind of naive, and also like I read some of the pieces that I did in like 2016. You know, I hate to say it, but I'm impressed with who that journalist was, like doing like I remember interviewing like government officials. I'd interview like club kids in Harajuku. I was really like fearless about going and talking to people, and I couldn't speak Japanese then at all, but I managed to make it work. And I think that quite quickly got me within the first year. I was covering Tokyo Fashion Week for Vogue Runway, which was a huge thing for me. And also when I was out there, this was another one of those like moments where, like you said, that light that I found of like, can I really make this work? And it was it doesn't exist in the same way anymore, but it was the Vogue talent contest.
Right.
I entered it twice. First was the year that I was at the Telegraph, and I remember I got the rejection letter the first time to say I hadn't been shortlisted.
Yeah.
And the next year I did it again, but I was in Japan that time, and I entered it again, and that time I got shortlisted. And I was like, that was like the best news ever, because I don't know, the alumni of that award, the shortlisters, the runner-ups and the winners of there's a lot of people in the industry that have gone on to do really good things. So for me, it was like it was just a mark of approval to say like I'm good enough, basically. It was that kind of confidence that it gave me. So I flew.
We need those things, don't we?
We do need those things, I think, as writers.
Sometimes just to get that validation and you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, because I think writing's so kind of subjective as well, a lot of the time. But so you were, for that, as part of getting shortlisted for that, you won a lunch with all the Vogue editors and all the other shortlisters. So I flew back to London for it, especially. Used it as an excuse.
Yeah.
And I won the runner-up prize, which was £500, which just about, I think, paid for my flight. and it was so worth doing. And it was that was a really, like, I'm really proud of that. Even, you know, it's funny to be so proud of like a runner-up thing, but it was.
No, I totally get it.
That was something that it just made me feel like I'm good enough to do this job.
Yeah.
And that opened, I think that inadvertently opened doors, probably because I felt more
confident in your abilities. Yeah, but as you say, it's just, and I, certainly not to the extent that you do, but you know, have some times of doing writing, and it's the strangest thing, isn't it? Because you're all in your own head. You're generally sitting on your own without people to bounce off.
I hate it.
It's not healthy, really. I was doing it last night, and I was sort of just. It wasn't a long piece, but I just took so long over it, and just started second guessing myself, and it wasn't great. But
yeah, I mean, I relate to that very hard. I don't enjoy it at all. It's that like cliche thing of hate writing, love having written. Because I don't enjoy writing, but it's something that. I don't know, it's just what you have to do, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned that moment, which is a fantastic achievement. Is there sort of one other kind of standout, you know, person you met or sort of moment in your writing career across, you know, the various titles you've written for?
What, like a highlight?
I don't know, just something that stands out when you think about the work at Mr. Porter or GQ or something. You know, was there someone you interviewed or something that happened?
I mean,
so far,
I think interviewing, when I was in Tokyo the first time around, I interviewed Naomi Watanabe for American Vogue, who was, I think she still is, the most followed person on social media in Japan. So she's like a super Japanese celebrity. She's a comedian and lives in New York now, I think. But she, like, interviewing her was like I don't know, it felt like a big thing.
Yeah.
And she was really nice, and it was fun we went to like the Park Hyatt in Tokyo.
Oh, with the Lost in Translation one.
Yeah. And it was, I don't know, she's like so famous that even in Japan, you know, she had to kind of be quite covert, and it was just all very fun to like meet her and go and talk to her in a hotel room. So that was a fun thing. And then, I don't know, being back in London afterwards and like interviewing like Dries Van Noten was a particular highlight.
Oh, cool.
But yeah. I was thinking about this and like, you know, what are the good things? And honestly, the best part and the most kind of important part I feel about my job is interviewing Japanese designers, and especially young Japanese designers. And this last, when was it? In March, the Tokyo Fashion Week, and kind of being back here, and this time being back with a bit more command of Japanese, and being able to interview a lot of these designers, and my wife, actually, credit to her, helped me with a lot of the interviews, translating and interpreting, and getting to talk to like those young designers that aren't famous and aren't established, you know, in most cases can't speak English, so don't know how to kind of market themselves abroad, but really, you know, want to be, they're really, really talented, but nobody knows their stories. So that was like incredibly,
with loads of potential,
incredibly rewarding to be able to
talent spotting nice and early.
Yeah, that's something that I find like genuinely rewarding to do. That's like my favorite part of the job. That's a joy to do.
Oh, I love it. Well, look, we talked about some of the different things that you cover. Obviously, fashion we've talked a little bit about, but you know, you often write about skincare and grooming. So
I do.
The fact that, you know, one of the key things on the podcast is to ask the guest about some of the sort of key bathroom essentials. I mean, I'm really looking forward to finding out what you're using. I suspect it might be quite a big shelf, but and obviously you're fortunate, as I am sometimes, to people send you different things. So really intrigued to find out about some of the products that you're using in your morning and evening routine at the moment. So should we start with skincare? Are you kind of set on a certain number of products, certain brands, or do you kind of mix it up according to what comes through the letterbox?
Absolute chaos with skincare. So I'll preface
just trying a bunch of different things.
Yeah, I'll preface this by saying that. So I worked at Mr. Porter as an editor there, and did a lot of grooming content for them. I did that for 5 years. I think
I saw your work there.
Yeah, and I did that for 5 years in London, and that was. And as you know, when you're an editor and you write about skincare, you can basically get whatever you want with the understanding that you write about it.
We're not talking diamonds, are we?
We're talking.
Often talking.
Well, do you know what?
A £10 moisturiser.
I've got a diamond serum. Genuinely, we are sometimes talking diamonds. But I'll preface this by saying that some of these things are. I couldn't necessarily buy them with my own money, but
because of the cost.
Because of the cost,
high value.
Because of the cold hard cost, I couldn't. One of my favourite serums is by 111 Skin, and it's called the Celestial Black Diamond serum, and it does actually have diamond particles in it. And I don't know if that actually, apparently they penetrate deeper into the pores because the particles are so fine. But I don't know if that's actually works or not, but it is a very good serum. But it's north of like £200, I think.
Whoa!
I don't know exactly, but it's silly money. But it's one of those things where I think, if I was very wealthy, I would absolutely buy it for myself rather than just get sent it.
So what about what are you using at the moment? And if you could run through it, it'd be great.
So I'm at the moment. So I had to edit down quite a lot and a lot of brands won't send to me in Japan because it's so far away. So I've edited down quite a lot, so now it's a little bit less chaotic.
Okay.
But I've been using a brand called Tatcha, Tatcha.
Oh, okay.
Which it's based in, I think it's an American-based brand, but it's like Japanese inspired.
Right.
So I cleanse with their like cleansing oil, and they have like a rice polish exfoliator.
Have you seen that in London, Ashley? Is that in the UK?
It was. I don't even know if it's a thing in Japan, but it's a thing in the UK. Right. It's quite popular there. Yeah. Maybe more in the women's realm, but it's like a skincare nerd brand, I guess. But it's really good. So I cleanse. It's like a double cleanse thing. Yep. So you cleanse with the oil to get get into the pores, and then with the rice polish, like exfoliate afterwards. It's really good. And then what else have I been using? I'm a big fan of so SPF is really big in Japan.
Yeah.
So an SPF moisturizer. So there's one of my favorite SPFs to cheapen things or make things a bit more affordable. Is from Muji. I don't know if they have it in the UK. Maybe they do, but Muji.
Yeah.
Homeware store.
Yeah.
So they do great skincare. It's really affordable.
Yeah, and I think there's skincare's in the UK ones as well.
Yeah, I think there is. I don't know if it's quite as the range is probably slightly edited.
Yeah, it's probably more limited, isn't it?
You get the SPF here, and it's really great. So I use that every day.
And is that a pure SPF, or is it a sort of moisturizer come SPF, or does it just do the SPF job?
I think it's probably in Japanese, so I have no idea. But it's like an SPF milk, I think it's called.
Oh, okay.
But it's quite good. I'm very pale, so I need it. And then I also use the Grown Alchemist, which I think is an Australian brand, but has it in the UK.
It does.
Their facial SPF is excellent. It goes on white, but it very quickly melts into the skin.
Right.
And I think that's probably the best facial SPF I've used. And then what else do I use? Susanna Kaufmann is a very good. I can't remember exactly where it's from. I think she's Austrian. Let me just double check.
I've heard of the brand. I haven't had any.
I've met her.
I've heard the name.
She's brilliant. But she's
is she?
Yeah, she is. So she has she's from a hotelier dynasty in Austria, and she makes this great wellness skincare brand. And yeah, her day cream is brilliant.
What's the product? Day cream.
But what I've been using at the moment is the night. She has like a night serum, and then it's a night cream to follow it. That is like, It smells really good. It's just like you wake up feeling really like moisturized.
And what about sort of shaving? Yeah, are you a sort of daily shaver, or do you leave it?
So this is an interesting one. I am I'm a laserer. So
are you?
I started in London just before the pandemic, where I did get shaving rash, and I have quite sensitive skin, but quite thick facial hair,
right?
But not kind of good enough to grow a beard. It's really annoying,
like
kind of
yeah,
like non-entity on my face. So So
would it be patchy? Like if you left it all together, would it have just come out in
like it's like
bits?
It was like black and then brown and blondie, and I don't know. I never really let it get long enough because I never really wanted it to. But I decided to get rid of it because I knew I never wanted it.
That's really interesting. I haven't spoken to anyone who's done sort of lasering for that. So what's the setup with that?
Weirdly rare, I think. I went to some, as I say, usually when you're in this line of work, you can get things for free. But this was something that I just sought out on my own and went to do in a clinic in London.
And is it like a permanent thing then? You don't have to do it again?
I wanted it to be, but the pandemic kind of happened and I couldn't go for like months. And then it really hurts, by the way. I had it.
Does it?
Like really, I don't know if it was the particular one that I had, but it was like really painful, surprisingly so.
The laser's got to cover off, do you go and have different zones of the sort of, chin and cheeks and things? Is that how it works? Just got this sort of firing at different bits?
They basically, put you lay on the bed, and then they put the like glasses on you so the light doesn't zap your eyes. And then they like go around and zap your chin and your neck and your upper lip, and it hurts. It works, but it takes like a few goes. And I'm at the point now where I didn't have it done for like, I wasn't as consistent with it as I should have been. So now it's kind of like, it's kind of half back, and I'm thinking about getting it done over here.
And how, when you go for a session, how long do you sit there and have the zapping?
So it's like 10 minutes, but 10 minutes of torture.
God, that sounds awful.
And but I don't know, I think I'd prefer that to like, I don't know, I'm quite like coldly efficient if it means not having to shave it. Yeah, I can take it.
And it would be, as in normal kind of laser removal, it would be perfectly smooth, would it, on your... Well, I mean... That's the idea.
Yeah, but it isn't perfectly smooth. But it's like heavily reduced, so it feels like I still shave now. I shave with an electric Philips razor that's just from Amazon. Yeah. But I shave maybe like a couple of times a week.
Right. And what about fragrance, Ashley? What's your relationship with fragrance? Are you someone that's sort of quite loyal to a specific scent, or do you have a scent wardrobe? Or
I'm way too like fickle and flighty for that.
I think also why limit it to? I mean, there's so many amazing fragrances. Why just
exactly? I like the idea of having a signature scent, but it's just not. I don't know. I'm not that committed. I love like dramatic kind of weird things. I think I like.
Do you go sort of deeper, darker?
Yeah, I quite like. It depends. Like I'm very like on the mood, but I like a very like expensive smelling. But I think that's the thing. I think that's such a thing, like an expensive smelling fragrance that's like. Which again, I was very spoiled with my job of like my favorite.
Mr. Porter had some good ones.
Yeah.
What are you liking at the moment?
So one of my favorites that I always use are, the weirdest one that I love is by Timothy Han, who is a London-based perfumer.
Yes, I've seen his things in Earl of East, I think.
Yeah, he bases his scents on books, which is so pretentious.
Yes,
I just love it.
Love it.
And
love it.
And not because it has the Japan connection, but the one that I love is called Decay of the Angel, inspired by the Yukio Mishima book. And it's like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just like, it's almost like medicinal, but quite like dark floral, kind of churchy.
Yeah,
like,
nice.
It's quite like dentisty somehow. It's really strange, but I just love it. It's like I'm not selling it well, but it smells amazing, and I use that for like, that's like a kind of going out, dressing up kind of fragrance. And then one of my other favorites is one I use for my wedding, which is it's by Maison Francis Kurkdjian, who I think is I think
genius.
They make my favorite fragrances overall, and it's called Petit Matin,
right?
Like Little Morning. And it's just that's a lot lighter and fresher and a lot less. It's a little bit more accessible, but that's like delicious. I love that.
Yeah.
So those are my go-tos.
Have you been introduced to? I'm sure you have. I mean, you mentioned Muji obviously already, but have you been introduced to lots of new brands since you've been back in Japan? I guess there's a whole range that some of which we get here and some of which we don't. Maybe all the sort of Korean ones and Japanese ones. There must be tons, right? If you've got an interest in that area.
There are a lot out here, but I'm terrible that I've got a lot of like swag from the UK that I'm working through.
Still working through that. Got to get through that first.
I've got a lot of like Dennis Gross and that kind of stuff that I really like using. So I haven't yet gone deep into Japanese skincare. But there's a lot of like, I mean, my wife's like is religiously uses sheet masks every night.
Does she?
So, yeah. And I've kind of started. So there's a brand called Lululun, which is Lululun.
Right.
Which is like a pretty like widely available brand here. And they're really good for sheet masks. And I used to think, well, they don't really do anything. But if you use them every night, they do.
And you leave it on all night?
No. I mean, I suppose you could. You leave it on for like 20 minutes.
Right.
And do that after you brush your teeth. They're pretty good, but in Japan you get like the bumper packs of like 50. So they're intended to be used regularly.
Right.
They're just like wet wipes that you put on your face.
Okay.
But yeah.
And I think I saw you post about it, and because there's ones that are even more sort of technically advanced, isn't there now? All this sort of lights in them and all that kind of stuff, isn't there? That kind of thing as well.
Well, Dennis Gross has like an LED mask.
That's it.
It's really good. And then again, 111 Skin, the London-based skincare brand, they do excellent masks. They do eye masks as well. They're like gel kind of. They're quite like I think they're like kind of like silicone type consistency. So they're not like paper, but they're genuinely excellent, and they're the kind of thing that you put them under your eyes and you actually notice the difference afterwards.
Right.
But again, you have to use them. You have to be consistent.
Yeah. So I was interested, all the years you've been writing about skincare and grooming things. I mean, have you seen lots of changes in terms of how men are kind of receiving this information now? Do you think we're sort of men are kind of more open to this whole world? Have you found this sort of, there's less resistance now, or is it changing? What are people sort of asking you to write about different kind of stuff? Or?
I think, there's a huge, and I think it's something that like, anyone with a brain could see a mile coming, that it's really expanded and people have become much more open-minded about it.
Yeah.
And I think, it's a very, very, it's a super complex thing. I think hand in hand, it goes with insecurity and social media and expectation to look a certain way that I think, as women, like the plastic surgery boom, like whenever that was like 20 years ago when everyone was talking about that in the media, I think, that's obviously like slowly but surely transferred over to men. And there's that, and we have that pressure as well now to, you read about like people who work in high powered jobs and they have to look, they have to like maintain a certain, I guess, American Psycho-esque level of appearance to make them look like they've got their shit together, that's the dark side of it. But yes, I see a huge appetite for it that wasn't there when I started doing this stuff.
You're right though, aren't you? Because I think, say on the one hand, people like you and I'm really happy that men are kind of more interested in this conversation and more interested in, the products themselves and of course wanting to take care of themselves. But I guess, like you say, there's a kind of flip side of that as well, isn't there? That you end up sort of taking on some of the same pressures that women have had for a long time about, you can't, or you could possibly take those things on of feeling I need to look a certain way, or, feeling like people you're seeing on social media that, you don't look like them and you want to, and all that kind of stuff. And men are not immune to that stuff anymore, are they?
No, I think especially not. I think especially with like men wanting to like be really built and like have a certain body, and like men taking steroids, or like people taking Ozempic, that like weight loss drug.
Yes.
Which is, trending. It's, I don't know, there's obviously that like horribly dark side to it. But then on the flip side, I think it's what I like is that, we're more open to, there's the other side of it that's often abused the way we talk about it, but like self-care and there's nothing wrong with taking care of your skin. And I have always been very, I've always felt that was like a natural thing to want to do. And I always rejected the idea that it wasn't something that a man should do. I think that idea that wearing makeup or, putting on a sheet mask or something, the idea that that's feminine, I think is rooted in misogyny and homophobia, and like not wanting to be like feminine and not wanting to be like a woman. And I think I'm someone that's always been quite feminine, and for whatever reason I've always been quite comfortable and confident in that, which I feel very lucky to be. But I think that is a positive thing when men can take something from it and enjoy like the softer side of being human, and enjoying like a fragrance or the way a moisturizer feels. I think that's a nice
totally
thing.
I think the more people we can expose to the pleasures around that and how it can make you feel good. I mean, I get it. Obviously, you can still encounter the kind of sort of basic ideas sometimes. Oh, it's not very manly or whatever, but it does seem slightly ridiculous, doesn't it, in 2023 that anyone would have to justify what they do or what they use to make themselves feel good, and why
it's
not?
It's so weird though. It's such like a dichotomy. Like if you look at like what the I don't know, in the UK especially, like what the male ideal is, it's like, I guess it's like the Love Island contestant, but that is a very extreme preened image of like a male,
it's like sort of hairless and tattoos and all that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very like enhanced, and it's like drag, I think it's like a specific kind of drag.
Yeah, you're right. And it's interesting how, we watch some of those shows occasionally with our son who's nearly 15, and sort of, it's weird how kind of uniform, as you say, all those guys, well, and the women, but looking at the guys, they're all built the same way, and they all have, generalizing massively, obviously, often a whole sleeve of tattoos, and they kind of work out in the same way. So just sort of these identikit men, and it is interesting, an interesting dichotomy where, in some ways there's still this sort of resistance to looking after yourself and looking good, yet actually, there's a whole bunch of people who are doing it in quite a sort of extreme way, but it's done generally through the gym and working out and all of that kind of stuff. But that's somehow,
but it's all the same stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Somehow that's okay, but I don't know, it's strange. And now being based in Japan, I mean, I guess you've got another perspective there as well. I mean, do you sense, do you have an idea of sort of masculinity and what feels like, an idea of what a modern man in Japan is? Because I'm going way back to the mid 90s, but as I think we discussed previously on our chat, certainly then, so we're talking 30 years ago, quite traditional setup in terms of, quite often there were less women working then. I'm sure that's changed a lot now, but quite traditional gender roles in Japan when I was there. But I wonder, has that changed, and is there a kind of new modern man in Japan now? Is there still sort of remnants of that?
I mean, it's like,
I guess it's a big question.
It is, but let's tackle it because it's a fun one. I think it's
okay.
But yeah, I'm not. I'll preface this by saying this is from my own this is completely from my own view. I'm not I'm not like going to be like a total anthropologist about it. But so when I was on the train a couple of days ago, there was a good example of this. So I saw there was an advert for some lipstick, and it was like a woman with like, the fan blowing her hair everywhere, and she was like putting on this like juicy red lip.
Yeah.
And then there was a guy in the advert doing the same thing. And the advert was for this lipstick that was apparently like completely genderless, and it was more of like a lip gloss, I guess. But
it was played completely straight. It wasn't like the guy was taking the mick or anything. Like he was just the guy enjoying his lipstick as well.
Completely serious cosmetics advert. And it was, I thought that was a really good example of like where we're at with like beauty standards in Japan for both men and women.
Yeah.
Which I think is a very different thing to like, Japan is like, I think it's got a pretty shameful, it's quite low down on the gender equality scale, like in terms of women in positions of power and things like that. So it's not like the gender binary is less enforced here. It's just that it's like in terms of like beauty expectations, it's really different. So men, and this is something that I personally find quite. This is something that I don't know. It's a funny one for me because I grew up always being quite like feminine, and like I said, for whatever reason, being like totally comfortable and almost like obnoxiously so in kind of being like not
militant about it.
Yeah, like being like girlier than the other boys, but like it was something that I don't know. And in England, I always felt like a pressure to be a certain way, I guess. And in Japan,
But did that ever? I mean, you say, and I really admire that kind of that strength there. But did that ever get you in situations where, you're being yourself, but knowing that might get you beaten up or get yourself in trouble?
Absolutely. I experienced a lot of homophobia growing up, which is interesting because I'm, technically identify as a straight man at the same time as never really identifying with other straight men. And
I guess it's sort of, there is, I can't imagine there's time in those encounters to kind of explain the nuances of it, or just someone's punching you and that you're going down or you're fighting or whatever, but it doesn't get particularly academic, does it?
No, exactly. And when you're like 14, you don't know how to articulate that kind of thing. So I think but for whatever reason, I was always really like, I never felt like I was bullied because I was always really probably like arrogant with it and never like, I don't know, I didn't take any shit from people at school. And I don't know why, because I'm small and skinny and not good in a fight. But I don't know where it came from. I just wasn't scared of, and I was always sure of myself. But it also, it hurt a lot when you get like, what hurts the most in that kind of situation is when you get friends and some of the worst, like gay men who tell you that you're gay, or people who, acquaintances who like, they say, oh, you'll be gay when you're older. I always found that like incredibly patronizing and
like me better than me kind of thing.
And in some cases I think that's the reality for people, that people knew they were gay before they were, but for me it was never like that. And it was a weird thing to experience. Even now I think it's a difficult thing, 'cause, can I truly experience homophobia in the same way that a gay man can? No, but then I can still experience it in my own way.
I guess if you're sort of breaking it down, and that situation where I don't know, someone's wanting to punch your head in or abuse you or whatever because they perceive you a certain way, the kind of the intricacies of whether they're right or wrong, it doesn't make any difference, does it? That's what you're still experiencing the same punch in the head or whatever, or the same abuse or whatever
the same
it
remark
is.
on the street, or but it's I don't know. It's something that I don't know. It's something that I thankfully don't really think about much anymore, which is nice. And what I was going to say was that being in Japan is there are just not those expectations to be that kind of like what I would say is like more like toxically masculine. There aren't those expectations here.
Oh, that's interesting.
You can be a bit like.
And is that because again, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but being a Western male, you're sort of othered and different anyway? Or is it because you think as a society it's kind of less about certain, definitions of masculinity and maleness?
I think honestly it's both, because I think being like a white guy in Japan, you're immediately different to
you're
everyone
different
else.
And often, and again, we chatted about this before, there's some guys in it, you can really see it go to their head, and it almost, you get this sort of tiny little glimpse of what it might
be to be really handsome and famous.
Be like to be kind of a little bit significant and famous, just because you happen to be a bit taller and, a Western male. But it's a kind of dangerous road, isn't it, I think? But yeah, you're different, and I'm only like 5'10" or something, but I remember there's that sort of classic thing of being in Japan and being sort of the tallest person
no,
on a train or a bus or something.
I'm shorter than I'm shorter than you, but
I'm not really.
I'm still like here. I'm like average height, and it's more like, I don't know. It's that feeling of like, I think other people. It's difficult because people complain a lot about like how Japanese people treat like foreigners, but I don't ever take it to, I don't know. I never get offended by someone treating you slightly differently because you're a foreigner. But it's something that I don't know. It's something you're made conscious of, I think. But it's so, to go back to talking about like being a man here, I think I'm first and foremost perceived as a foreigner before anything else. So which I
that's
think
the first sort of layer of it.
Yeah, which I think that blurs things to people probably. But then at the same time, on top of that, like I said, there was just less expectation here to be a certain kind of way as a man, or in the way that it is in the West. Definitely, it's just very different, and it's something that here I genuinely feel more at ease as the kind of man I am here. And I can't articulate all the nuances of that, but that's the kind of like general vibe I feel.
Well, look, we're talking about appearance and how we sort of perceive ourselves, which takes me very neatly to this idea of what do you see when you look at the man in the mirror? I wonder. Some of it, I guess we've covered, but you're obviously someone that takes care of your appearance, and you use the masks and expensive skincare and all that stuff. But do you like what you see? Are you happy with what you see?
That is such a hard question, isn't it? Some days, yeah, absolutely, and some days, absolutely not. Are
you hard on yourself, do you think?
Yeah, I'm really hard on myself. I think in every aspect of my life, I'm very hard on myself with work and probably how I look. But I'm not, I don't know. I wouldn't say I'm satisfied, but I wouldn't say I'm dissatisfied, if that makes sense. It's a very like
happily in the middle,
intangible thing. But I don't have a problem per se with anything at the moment, but let's see. I don't know how something that my own kind of like, when I say my own attractiveness, I don't mean to say that I'm attractive. It's just like my own.
Yeah, no, I get it.
My own like looks are, because I'm like in England anyway, pretty short and like quite feminine. I think I've always like traded on being like kind of cute. That's kind of that's like my brand of like look, I guess. But
yeah,
I think that's very associated with youth. So I think as I get older, I'm quite scared at how I'm going to age out of that, because what comes after that, is it just like, I don't know. It's like, it's what the gays on the internet called twink death, which I think I've probably already gone through. But it's like you lose your like your like youthful glow and
cuteness. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
How old are you, Ashley? How old are you?
I'm 31 at the moment.
So, I mean, I think if I could say, I think you do have a very young look. You are quite youthful, aren't you?
I was thinking, when my mum, who's visiting at the moment, she was telling me today, like, you look like a teenager.
She mean that as a compliment?
And I don't think so. But
thanks, Mum.
I do. I've always looked really young, so I'm worried that, is that going to kind of fall off one day?
But interesting then that you've and I know you discussed why you did it, but that sort of youthful look, you were kind of almost keen to accentuate even more with the lasering of the hair and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think that's because it suits me, or I think it does. It fits into that because it's like a beard doesn't suit me. And I don't see a future where it would. So
yeah,
I don't know. Let's see what happens. But at the moment, I'm tentatively okay with the man in the mirror.
We'll revisit Ashley in 20 years' time and see if he's still happy with his cute look. And the final thing, it's been so interesting to find out more about you and where you are in life. But just, I wonder what are the things that make you happy and bring you joy?
I think I don't know, this is really cheesy, but my wife is brings me a lot of joy.
It's not cheesy, yes.
I think
amazing.
It's
a good thing.
Yeah, we have I think I'm incredibly lucky that we met. I think we met for the first time when I was on Jet Program in Japan.
Right.
Very long time ago. I was reporting on a fashion show. She was one of the street cast models in the show, and I met her at an after party. We didn't talk. We couldn't speak to each other because I couldn't speak Japanese and she couldn't speak English. But then she moved to London a couple of years later, and fast forward to now, where we got married in 2021.
And you sort of kept in touch in the meantime. It's like, did she come to London? Were you part of the reason?
I wasn't part of the reason, no. She came to London for work and messaged me to say that she was here. And I said, let's meet up. And we just hit it off. And she was in Paris for our first year of our relationship. But,
but I'd imagine as well, Ashley, that with you being in Japan and now in Tokyo, I guess you need that relationship to be pretty strong, because I've no doubt you're building a good network of friends and colleagues there, but it's a little bit different, isn't it? It's not like you've got people there from the last 30 years of your life, so that relationship with your partner is probably, I don't know, but I would imagine you spend quite a lot of your free time together. Do you think you maybe more than you might if you were here in the UK?
We're both freelance now, so we spend way too much time together probably.
Yeah, I'm at home too much now as well.
It seems to work. And she like you said, she's a big support for me here in Japan. But I did the same for her when we were in London.
Yeah.
And I think she's got me work before I've got her work before, because we work in vaguely the same industry. So it works well, and she's great. And we spent all of lockdown together as well and didn't get sick of each other. So
that's good. Testimony to a relationship that's working. Oh, look, it's been so great to talk to you, and really, really interesting to hear about the various projects you're doing, and obviously to hear about the bathroom essentials and the products that you rate. So I'll mention some of those in the program notes so that people can go and check them out and check out £200 diamond encrusted moisturizers or whatever. But,
sorry about that.
But I've loved chatting, and it's been really great to connect. And I'll obviously put links to where people can find out more about you and your articles as well. But look, take care, and thanks for doing this in the evening in Tokyo. And hope to connect again soon.
Thank you, Hayden. It's been a pleasure.
Good to speak to you, Ashley. Take care.
Oh, I love talking to Ashley. Really enjoyed his company, and I hope you'll agree that some brilliant products he was talking about there, but also his angle on masculinity and what it means. So huge thanks to Ashley. If you want to find him on Instagram, you can. It's Ashley Ogawa Clarke, which is all one word, and it's ASHLEYOGAWA CLARKE. It's Ashley Ogawa Clarke with an E on Instagram. You can see the articles he posts for places like Vogue and Wall Street Journal on his channel. But well worth a follow. So huge thanks to Ashley. If you want to find out more about Man in the Mirror, you can do on Instagram. I'm at Man in the Mirror Pod. You'll find information about previous episodes, some teases about what's coming up, and that's where I post links to new shows and where you can find out about the world of Man in the Mirror. So I'd love you to give us a follow and have a look over there. Thanks to Ashley. Thanks to you for listening, and I'll see you next time on Man in the Mirror. Take care.